From calling out the Gypsy King right before he locked in a fight with Francis Ngannou, to leaning towards a brawl in the boxing ring after Fury's shocking statement, here's why Tyson Fury and Jon Jones' hybrid fight is a big deal. For starters, it just seems like a race to overtake the former heavyweight champion because right after Ngannou's UFC exit, everyone in the MMA community knew he was going to step into the ring with Fury, or at least try to. If the UFC president didn't get to him before Ngannou did. That's right in the middle of the ongoing saga, Fury opened up about the offer he got from the UFC for a hybrid rules fight with Jon Jones. And if I'm being honest with you, fans were shocked to hear that because, let's face it, White isn't a really big fan of crossover fights, and he's proved that over the years. If anything, his offer for the Gypsy King shows a complete 180 by the UFC president who bashed boxing for making too many gimmick fights, all while whining about Ngannou signing a deal with the PFL. But it didn't take long for him to turn his back on that stance, and ever since then, he's here supporting the current heavyweight champion, who, by the way, wouldn't even have the opportunity to fight for the title if Ngannou hadn't left a spot empty for the belt after his UFC exit. Speaking of which, the Cameroonian fighter had the same demands right before he left. He wanted the flexibility to compete in boxing and fight someone like Fury. But back then, White wasn't ready to do anything other than pour millions of dollars into a deal. That was never gonna materialize. So now that Ngannou's out of the way, White moved on to the fighter's biggest rival, but that doesn't mean the Gypsy King's switching sides that easily. If there's one thing about Tyson, it's that negotiating a fight with him seems impossible to do sometimes. Especially if you consider how negotiations went down with Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua. One of his favorite tactics is to jump in with unpredictable demands or simply send a biased contract and throw in a couple of ultimatums and pressurize the other party. At one point, it seems like he's simply not interested in fighting anymore, but just wants to get out of it without looking like the bad guy. So now that he's got an offer from Francis, who's signed with the PFL, and Jones, who's signed with the UFC, he's got to make a choice. For one, is he even interested in a hybrid fight? And if so, which fighter is he gonna pick for what looks like an endless road of negotiations? Well, while a fight with Francis has come up a couple of times, enough to create the hype, Fury and Jones goes way back. Their rivalry started when commentator Joe Rogan joked that he'd bet all his money on the Black if they were to have a street fight of some sort. It's pretty obvious that the boxer picked up on the offensive comments, but still claimed that if a fight were to happen, it'd definitely be in the boxing ring. But is that gonna be ideal for Jones as his first crossover fight? I don't think so. Think about it. He's admitted that he'd struggle in the ring, and let's not forget who he's up against. Some of the top boxers failed to overpower the Gypsy King, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's way too challenging for Jones either. But that's only in the ring. Have Fury step in the cage, and Jones would eat him up. The two champions have their comfort zones, and while Jones is willing to step out of his, you can't be too sure about Fury. Not to mention, Fury never revealed what rules a hybrid fight would have either, because that could be a game changer. I mean, you've already got two of the best heavyweight fighters up against each other, each with their own comfort zones, and in a crossover fight like this, even one rule could flip the game entirely. On one hand, you've got Fury, who's never lost in 34 professional boxing fights, with 24 knockout wins to his name. On the other hand, there's Jones, who fans consider the greatest UFC fighter of all time as the two-time light heavyweight champion and current heavyweight champion. And if that wasn't enough, he's even got the UFC record for most lightweight title defenses and wins. But let's not forget, he's gone 3 years without a fight, right before he transitioned into the heavyweight division only to have Cyril Gane suffer a brutal defeat for the heavyweight title in March 2023. Clearly, he's still got what it takes even after the hiatus. I gotta admit, if this fight becomes a reality, Fury versus Jones would easily be the biggest boxer versus MMA fighter debut, at least since the Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Conor McGregor bout in 2017. Plus, fans are hoping Fury might end up jumping on the wagon for this one because he admitted that he's a victim of his own success, where he's that good that no one wants to fight him and ruin their career anymore. So if he's looking for someone to spice it up, a crossover fight against Jones might be exactly what he needs. I mean, he's already called out everyone in the top 15 of the heavyweight division. Sure, his terrible negotiations are to blame for some of the biggest showdowns, like the one with Usyk, but at least that means he can move on to other fights right now. Sure, any boxing fan would have loved to see the undisputed showdown, but a hybrid fight isn't the same. If anything, it's a lot different from traditional boxing or MMA fights. MMA is all about striking, grappling, and submissions. Fighters use a bunch of techniques with their opponents standing in front of them or controlling them on the ground for submission wins. If anything, since MMA combines all kinds of martial arts, most fighters have a pretty well-rounded skill set that they can use to their advantage. But the second they meet the deadliest puncher in history is where it starts to get interesting. Talking about the Mayweather versus McGregor clash in 2017, they were the biggest stars in their respective sports. Kinda like Fury and Jones right now. And let me tell you, the fight was a huge success, with a record of the second highest pay-per-view buys in history, and Mayweather's guaranteed check was $100 million, while McGregor left with $30 million. Over the years, there have been a bunch of hybrid fights that made it through after endless negotiations, and that's something you can expect here as well. But while a hybrid fight between the two could be a game changer for the world of combat sports, it seems like Fury came in again with another unpredictable move. He's not ready to enter the cage and fight Jones, claiming it's not his thing. Even though Fury always needs someone to blame when negotiations don't work out, and this time he shifted the blame to Joe Rogan, saying he's the one who instigated the entire controversy in the first place. And sure, Jones might be the GOAT of MMA, but Rogan claimed the Gypsy King would be smashed to bits if the two were locked in a room together. Fury clarified that he never really talked about the idea of entering an MMA fight against Jones anyway, and talking about some of the biggest fights in the past, he recalled the shocking win of the boxer Ray Mercer over Tim Silva in an MMA fight. Honestly, no one was expecting that. Mostly because boxers usually lose to skilled MMA fighters faster than you think. Is that the reason why Fury's stepping away from a hybrid fight because he thinks it might ruin his perfect record? Maybe. All I can say, for sure, is that he's not ready to step into the octagon. But if Jones comes into the boxing ring for a fight, Fury might have a different opinion, and that makes sense because in a situation like that, Fury would have complete control over the fight. And that's exactly what he wants. Not to mention, Jones and Ngannou are the ones offering a fight and not the other way around. So clearly, Fury's got leverage here and he's not letting it go. To top it off, if this fight becomes a reality, UFC might finally have a chance to redeem itself. Sure, it's a brand that's dug its way deep into the MMA community, but with how White's been so controversial, especially after Ngannou's exit, it seems like other promotions like PFL are stepping up to challenge UFC for the top spot. But teaming up with other sports like boxing and winning a fight against a top heavyweight like the Gypsy King is the perfect opportunity for White to take over the world of combat sports completely. So there you have it. From leaning towards a fight in boxing right after Fury's shocking statement to calling out the Gypsy King right before he locked in a fight with Francis Ngannou, that was why Tyson Fury and Jon Jones's hybrid fight is a big deal.